The elevator doors whooshed open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a polished hallway lined in marble and glass. Jack Hayes' tool bag slung over one shoulder paused on the threshold, his heart thumping louder than the click of his daughter's sneakers behind him. Maya, clutching his tool belt, peered up at the glimmering nameplate Sinclair Enterprises, Executive Suites. Before he could step forward, a sharp voice sliced the air. "Sir, you're not supposed to be on this floor." Jack's eyes flicked to the woman standing like a statue in charcoal heels. Jade Sinclair, the CEO, with a reputation for zero tolerance. Her gaze traveled over Maya's pink backpack back to his tool bag, landing on the child's wide, curious eyes. The tension crackled like static. Jack's jaw tightened. If he didn't get that printer fixed, the CFO would have his head. If he didn't get Maya out of sight, he'd have Jade's. If that scene has you on the edge of your seat, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment below, and stay tuned. More twists are coming. Jack Hayes drew in a measured breath and squared his shoulders. He'd been called to printer emergency room 47A, his pager buzzing insistently in his pocket before the sun had fully risen. He'd hauled his toolbox onto the service elevator expecting fluorescent lights and irritated suits and tangled phone calls. He had not expected to haul his 8-year-old daughter up here. But Maya's babysitter had bailed at the last minute, and with the school closed for teacher in service, he couldn't leave her alone. He'd popped in earphones, reminded her of the rules, read her book, stay seated, don't touch anything. Simple enough. The moment they exited the elevator, Maya froze. She'd never seen floors so quiet and gleaming. The carpet runner was thick footfalls muted. The walls were art gallery white. Then came the click, click, click of stiletto heels growing louder with each step toward them. Jack's blood cooled. Maya stiffened, folding her arms. The woman arrived and Jack recognized her instantly from news articles. Jade Sinclair. She was taller than she looked in photographs, her posture perfect, every millimeter of her tailored suit, speaking of boardroom power. Her gray eyes swept from Jack's dusty tool bag to Maya's scuffed sneakers and back. She didn't blink. She didn't smile. "Sir, you're not supposed to be on this floor," Jade said, voice clipped and cold. Her arms crossed chest lifted an invisible spotlight, focusing on their unscheduled presence in her pristine domain. Jack swallowed. "Ma'am, I'm here to fix the printer in 47A. It's a critical jam in the CFO's suite." He tapped his pager. "Urgent call." Her gaze narrowed. 47A is the executive floor. She pronounced each word like a verdict. Jack nodded, forcing a polite smile. "I figured. The signs pointed this way. I'll be quick. Just point me to the machine." She said nothing. Maya shifted and tried to shrink behind her father, clutching his belt. Jade's eyes flicked to the little girl. "Is that your daughter?" Jade asked. Jack cleared his throat. "Yeah. Babysitter bailed, school's closed, and I can't exactly leave an 8-year-old at home alone. She won't touch anything. I promise." Maya gave a valiant nod, but her nose wrinkled with apprehension. She swallowed a question, marveling at the vast, echoing silence of the hallway. For a heartbeat, Jade said nothing. The air between them felt thick enough to cut with a knife. Jack felt sweat prickle behind his collar. He glanced down at Maya and offered her a quick, reassuring squeeze of the shoulder. Finally, Jade's shoulders relaxed ever so slightly. She stepped aside without a word, sweeping back toward her own office. The click of her heels receded. "Thanks," Jack muttered, exhaling as he ushered Maya forward. "Come on, sweetheart, let's get this thing fixed." Maya followed obediently, but something in her eyes had changed. She'd spotted the sleek conference room windows, the artful lounge area beyond, and most of all, the gleaming crystal chess set displayed on a low table. Jack hustled her through the glass doors before curiosity could win out. Inside the executive lounge was more gallery than office chrome accents, floor-to-ceiling windows, with a city view, a coffee bar stocked like a 5-star cafe. At its center, beneath a shaft of afternoon light, sat a crystal and obsidian chess set, each piece carved with exquisite detail, catching rays like gemstones. Jack hurried Maya to a plush leather sofa and handed her a children's book from his bag. "Here you go. Sit here, read this, and I'll be back in a flash." He ruffled her hair, dropped a quick kiss on her forehead, then disappeared through the glass hallway toward the printer room. Maya opened her book, but her eyes kept straying to the chess set. The knight's carved mane, the bishop's slender silhouette. It all whispered invitations she couldn't ignore. She tucked the book under her arm, crawled off the sofa, and tiptoed toward the table. She reached out fingertips, brushing cold crystal, lifting the night. It felt weighty in her palm, as if it held some secret. "Do you know how that one moves?" Maya gasped and dropped the piece, but caught it before it hit the glass table. She turned to see Jade Sinclair standing behind her arms, clasped at her waist, her white blazer pristine against the warm lounge tones. I'm sorry," Maya stammered. "I wasn't going to break it. I was just—" Jade held up a hand. "You're not in trouble. I just asked a question. Do you know how the night moves?" Maya nodded slowly. L shape, two up, one to the side. Jade's lips curved in the slightest, almost imperceptible smile. "Impressive." Maya swallowed. "I learned from a book." Jade studied her as though calculating something far more significant than chess moves. Finally, she offered, "Would you like to play just one game?" Maya blinked. "With you?" Jade nodded. "Yes, with me." By the time Jack returned, he found his daughter settled on a low stool opposite Jade Sinclair mid-game, without even knowing how. He froze, wrench in hand, heart pounding. Everyone in the city knew Jade's ruthlessness. Who knew she'd be here teaching Maya the Queen's Gambit? Jade glanced up, her gaze softening as she met Jack's stunned eyes. "She has a sharp mind," she said, moving her rook with quiet precision. Jack closed his mouth, swallowed twice, and stepped fully into the lounge. Maya bit her lip, eyes flicking between her father and the board, as if daring either of them to object. "Go on," Jade told Jack. "She's fine." Jack exhaled a smile, tugging at his lips. He sank into a chair nearby. "Just one game, then?" he asked Maya. Maya nodded, grinning. The night awaited its next call to adventure, and in that moment Jack realized some surprises were worth every risk. The moment Jack slipped through the glass doors and disappeared down the corridor toward the printer room, the executive lounge felt larger somehow, both cavernous and intimate. Maya pressed her back into the plush leather of the sofa, clutching her picture book, but not reading. Her eyes kept wandering across the room to the chrome countertops, to the polished wooden panels, to the muted hum of the espresso machine. But most of all, they rested on the crystal and onyx chess set, cemented on a low lacquered table at the lounge's center. Sunlight tumbled through floor-to-ceiling windows, refracting across each piece like 1,000 tiny spotlights. The pawns caught the light in flecks of obsidian. The knights glowed with inner fire, and the queen, taller than everything else, seemed to hold court under the high ceiling. Maya felt a familiar thrill, the same one she got when she'd first learned how to read or tie her shoelaces. This set was calling to her, whispering its own invitation across the distance. She glanced toward the entrance, half expecting her father to reappear and shoo her back to the sofa. But the hallway remained empty. The lounge was quiet, except for the low chatter of a distant meeting room and the soft hiss of the coffee machine steaming milk. Maya slid from the sofa book, forgotten, and padded toward the chess table on tiptoe. The carpet silenced her footsteps. Each red and gold swirl swallowed sound. When she reached the table, Maya hesitated for a heartbeat. The pieces looked too delicate to touch. She inhaled, then placed her small hand on the marble edge of the table and leaned in, studying the arrangement as if it were a map of hidden treasure. The board was set in standard opening position, white pieces, neat black pieces shadowed, but the craftsmanship was unlike anything she'd seen. Each knight's mane was meticulously carved. The rooks sat on turreted bases, as though guarding a fortress. The bishops wore tiny mitres. Even the pawns radiated personality. Her fingertips hovered over a white knight, its head turned in mid-prance. She remembered her father's instructions, "Don't touch anything." But this was different. This was like discovering an abandoned friend. Gently she lifted the knight from its square. It felt heavier than she expected, cold and smooth under her fingers. The onyx swirl in its base gave depth an unfathomable pool of night. Maya's eyes widened. It moved here, she thought, recalling the lines from her chess primer. 2 forward, 1 to the side. The L shape. She turned to look around. No one was watching. All she saw were hanging planters, a row of magazines on a glass stand, and Jade Sinclair's office door closed. Silent, off limits. What would her father say? What would Jade think? A soft click behind her made Maya start. She spun around but saw only the reflection of the lounge in the window pane. The crystal set glowed like an altar. A part of Maya wanted to run back to her father, to the safety of his tool-strewn bag and the familiar hum of fluorescent lights. Another part felt rooted, as though the chess set had summoned her. Swallowing, she placed the knight on the square she thought best e4 and watched how the afternoon sun caught its polished surface. The board looked different now, no longer just a pattern, but a story unfolding. Maya leaned closer, imagining the black knight across from her shifting in reply. She traced the grid with her eyes, tile by tile, convinced she could see the dance of pieces before they ever moved. Somewhere beyond the lounge, the printer whirred, jammed paper feeding into the rollers. Jack's footsteps echoed faintly as he coaxed the machine back to life. Maya tuned him out. Here, in the hush of leather chairs and sparkling glass, she heard only the quiet drill of possibility. She lifted the bishop next, testing its balance. The curve of its mitre felt graceful beneath her thumb. Her mind whispered, "What if I could learn from this set? What if I could teach someone else one day?" A sudden pang hit her, how lonely her chess battles had felt at home, with no one to challenge her except shadows on the wall. Here, with these crystal pieces, she could have a world of opponents. The knight and the bishop found new squares, each move deliberate as a breath held. Maya felt a thrill of ownership, not of the pieces themselves, but of the space between them, of the possibilities in that room. She imagined two armies of crystal poised for battle, waiting for commanders brave enough to lead them. Soft footsteps approached. Maya froze, heart pounding, and tilted her head. The footsteps slowed, then stopped. She dared to glance up and saw Jade Sinclair standing at the edge of the seating area, arms folded, watching her. Jade's white blazer contrasted sharply with the rich tones of the lounge. Her heels were silent on the carpet now, as though she'd softened her stride. Maya held her breath, relieved Jade hadn't seen her rearranging the pieces yet. Jade's gaze moved from the board to Maya's face, curiosity flickering in her steel-gray eyes. She stepped closer and Maya braced, ready to apologize or run. Instead, Jade reached the table and placed a single finger on a black pawn. "Interesting move," she said quietly. The voice barely rose above a whisper, but carried the weight of judgment laced with wonder. "Why move the knight first?" Maya swallowed, heart still racing. "It felt right," she said, thinking of her book's diagrams. Jade nodded, almost as though she accepted that. She slid into the chair opposite Maya and swept her own pawn forward. "Your turn," Jade invited. Maya's eyes widened in surprise. The board had suddenly become a shared space, hers and Jade's, and whoever else might walk through those doors tomorrow. She lifted another crystal piece, determined to learn its secrets piece by piece under the faint hum of the lounge lights. Behind her, the hallway remained empty. Jack's footsteps receded, and the chess set's pieces stood witness to the beginning of something neither of them could have anticipated from a simple printer call. In that quiet, crystal-lit room, Maya discovered a world of silent conversations and found the courage to join them. Maya's small fingers trembled around the knight's slender neck as she lifted it from its square. The crystal felt impossibly cool, smooth beneath her fingertips. Its onyx base weighted just enough to remind her that every piece on this board carried its own story. She imagined the knight as a champion in miniature, a lone rider charging across an empty plain armor, gleaming in the sun. In Maya's mind, its silent whisper was a summons, "Move me where I belong." Across the room, the afternoon light shifted, casting prismatic shards onto the marble floor. The executive lounge, usually so forbidding with its chrome accents and muted luxury, seemed to pulse with a new rhythm as Maya held the knight aloft. Her heartbeat matched that rhythm, a quiet drum sounding in her chest. She'd spent countless hours playing phantom games at home, her little hands dancing over a worn wooden set. But this was different. Here the pieces felt alive. Maya drew in a breath, steadying herself against the swirl of excitement and nerves. She had only a moment before her father would reappear, calling her back to the safety of the sofa and her children's book. Yet something about this space, so alien and grand, made her long to stay to learn whatever secret language this crystal board might teach her. She carefully eased the knight forward, placing it on the square she felt most drawn to. The move was tentative but deliberate, 2 squares forward, 1 to the side. It was the opening she'd practiced in her head 1,000 times. She whispered the pattern to herself, L-shape. L-shape. The knight settled into its new home with a gentle click, as if the board itself acknowledged her command. A sudden click of heels on carpet made Maya freeze. She turned wide-eyed to see Jade Sinclair standing just behind her. Jade's white blazer was crisp, unmarred, and her posture was impeccable. Every inch the uncompromising CEO whose decisions reverberated through boardrooms and news feeds alike. Maya's chest tightened. She felt caught in a tableau she was not meant to enter. For a heartbeat, Jade said nothing. Her gray eyes, sharp as cut steel, studied Maya's small hand cradling the night. Then Jade spoke, her voice low but resonant in the hush of the lounge. "Do you know how that one moves?" Maya's throat went dry. She clutched the piece closer, her lips trembling. I think so," she managed, voice barely above a whisper. Jade's expression didn't soften yet. She remained poised, standing like a statue carved from alabaster. Maya tried to swallow the lump in her throat. The room felt suddenly smaller, the carpet's pattern shifting under the weight of unspoken expectation. "It moves in an L shape," Maya said, her voice steadier this time. "Two forward, one to the side." Or two to the side, one forward. The night in Maya's hand seemed to hum at her words, the crystal facets catching a flicker of light. Jade's lips curved briefly, just enough for Maya to know she'd been heard correctly. The ice around Jade's gaze thawed imperceptibly, a glimmer of surprise, or perhaps respect dancing in her eyes. "That's correct," Jade said, stepping closer to the table. Her presence no longer felt menacing, but curious, like a conductor discovering the first violinist in a symphony. Most adults can't recite that without hesitation. Maya's breath came in shallow bursts. She met Jade's eyes, trying to read the woman's intent. Was she going to dismiss her demand, she leave the pieces alone, call her father back to enforce the rules? Maya braced for an admonishment for the first time, feeling the weight of her own audacity. Instead, Jade lowered herself into the chair opposite Maya, resting a hand on the table's edge. The night still hovered between Maya's fingers and the square it had vacated. For a moment they simply looked at each other, child and CEO, connected by the shared understanding of that single piece. "You have a gift," Jade said quietly. "Not everyone hears the whisper of the pieces like you do." Maya blinked. Gift. She'd never thought of her love of chess that way. It had always been a refuge, a secret world where she could think her own thoughts far from playground chaos and homework pressures. To hear someone of Jade Sinclair's stature acknowledge it, Maya's heart fluttered with a mixture of pride and disbelief. Jade studied the board, tracing lines with her gaze, as though she could see beyond the crystal into Maya's imagination. "Tell me." She said after a moment, "Why move the knight first?" Maya hesitated, then spoke the truth. "It's unpredictable. It can jump over obstacles. It surprises other pieces." She slid the knight back into its new square and set it upright, careful not to chip its pristine edge. "And it feels like the right place, like it wants to go there." Jade nodded, letting her hand hover over her own pawn without moving it. "You make strategic guesses," Jade observed. "You listen to the board." Maya felt a warming glow spread through her chest. Jade's gaze lingered on her, softening further, as though the CEO's armor had been gently pried open by that tiny crystal knight. The tension that had crackled when they first met seemed to dissolve, replaced by a quiet camaraderie. "Your father." Jade continued, nodding toward the corridor where Jack's footsteps had retreated. "He must be proud." Maya tucked a stray curl behind her ear. "He says it's important to understand the whole board before making a move," she replied. "So you don't get trapped." Jade's lips tilted in a small but genuine smile. A wise lesson. She regarded Maya with an intensity that felt almost reverent. "May I ask your name, Maya?" she whispered. "Pleasure to meet you, Maya," Jade said, extending a hand. Maya's small palm met Jade's firm grip. The contrast soft, warm child's hand against the cool firmness of a CEO felt symbolic of the bridge forming between them. Maya's knight sat between them, silent and patient. She realized that this was more than a game, more than a test of knowledge. It was the beginning of a shared story, a silent conversation spoken through the subtle shifts of crystal and light. Jade leaned forward, her gaze locked on Maya's. "You have the heart of a grandmaster," she said softly. "You see possibilities where others see limitations." Maya's chest swelled. She half expected Jade to point abruptly to the door to remind her of rules and propriety, but instead Jade's white blazer looked less like armor and more like a mantle of unexpected kindness. Maya placed the knight on the side of the table and took a deep breath. In the gentle hush of the executive lounge, far from home, far from the world she knew, she felt seen in a way she'd never thought possible. And as Jade's steely gaze softened ever so slightly, Maya understood that this first whispered exchange would change more than the outcome of a single chess move. It would reshape both their worlds. The sunlight shifted as Jade Sinclair leaned back slightly, folding her arms with a confidence that seemed to fill the entire lounge. Maya's fingers still hovered over the crystal knight, the weight of possibility heavy in the air. Jade studied the child for a moment. Her small jaw set her eyes bright with curiosity and then asked, her voice unguarded for the first time, "Would you play one game with me?" Maya's head snapped up, eyes wide as plates of intrigue danced behind her lashes. She bit her lower lip, an old habit, when she felt excitement and nerves at once, and then nodded. "Yes," she said, voice soft but certain. Jade's lips curved in a small smile as though pleased by Maya's eagerness. She gestured to the other side of the board. "Sit here," she said gently, easing into the chair opposite Maya's favorite spot. "White or black?" Maya paused, tapping a stray curl behind her ear. White, she decided, remembering the countless games she'd imagined as white pieces always striking, first, always charting her own course. "Good choice," Jade replied, picking up the first pawn. She set it down on e2. "Let's begin." Maya reached for her own pawn and mirrored the move, marveling at how the pieces felt alive under her touch. The crystal board, once a static gem centerpiece, had turned into a stage for two opposites, a corporate titan and a quiet girl in scuffed sneakers. Neither spoke for a moment. They simply moved their pieces, pawns advancing knights, shifting bishops, sliding each move a word in a silent conversation. Halfway through the opening, Maya glanced up at the glass wall behind Jade, where the marble conference room loomed. Executives trailed in suits and heels, their reflections fragmented by the thick glass. In that moment, Maya felt bold here. She was 8 years old, holding her own against one of the most powerful women in the city, and her father was nowhere in sight to save her. A soft click of the printer room door broke the reverie, and Jack Hayes stepped back into view, wrench in hand, and his tool belt clinking. He spotted Maya immediately center stage, seated with Jade, and froze. For a fraction of a second, Jack's face registered panic, then confusion, then awe, as he saw Jade's calm posture and the knight positioned for what looked like a decisive strategy. "Hey, kiddo," Jack said, stepping forward quietly. He touched Maya's shoulder. "Printer's jammed, should be quick now." He glanced at the board. Mind if I grab my wrench and get back to it?" Jade looked up at Jack. One crystal eyebrow arched. The knight she'd just moved glinted between them. "She's in the middle of a game," Jade replied, tone neutral, but with an undercurrent of amusement. "She doesn't need rescuing." Jack blinked, took a breath, and nodded. "Right," he murmured. He set the wrench on the sofa beside him and sat in the chair Jade had vacated. He crossed his legs, watching Maya with a new kind of interest. Proud Daddy versus Panic Daddy, battling for control of his expression. Maya swallowed and turned back to Jade. "Your move," she said, voice steady. Jade's gaze softened as she surveyed the board. "Very well," she said, sliding her bishop diagonally across the squares. The piece rested menacingly close to Maya's pawn. "Check." Maya frowned, leaning in to consider the implication. Her mouth quirked in concentration as she remembered a variation from the chess workbook she'd pored over at home. She slid her knight around the threat, forming a quiet blockade that both protected her king and threatened Jade's rook. "Check," she declared, eyes shining. Jack whooped softly, covering his mouth. Maya's cheeks flushed with triumph. Jade paused mid-reach for her rook. Then she leaned back in her chair, studying Maya like she'd uncovered a hidden code in the city's skyline. "Remarkable," Jade said, voice low. "You play with intuition and an eye for patterns." Maya beamed. "Thank you." Around them, office life continued, distant laughter, muffled phone rings, the clack of laptop keys. But the chessboard had become a sanctuary, its crystal pieces reflecting a world beyond deadlines and bottom lines. Jade studied Jack, who shrugged sheepishly. "She's had plenty of practice," he said. But she's never played with someone like you. Jade nodded, returning her gaze to Maya. You're not intimidated, she asked the girl. Maya shook her head, pulling back a strand of hair. No, I like it when the game's hard. Jade smiled a true smile that reached her eyes. She extended her hand toward Maya's queen. Your queen, she said softly. A formidable piece. Maya nodded, flicked the queen onto a new square, and the game danced onward, knights whirring pawns shifting a delicate balance of offense and defense. Jack leaned forward, whispering, I think she's going to win. Jade glanced at him, shaking her head. Not so fast, she replied. Her next move was precise. She sacrificed a pawn to free her bishop, opening the board with ruthless elegance. Maya's jaw dropped. Maya's hand hovered over her next piece. She bit her lip, recalling her studies, her father's encouragement to think 2 moves ahead. She slid a rook forward to support her knight, foiling Jade's attack. She looked at Jack, who nodded, eyes bright. Jade watched the rook's new position for a long moment, then let out a breath. Well played, she murmured. She tapped the board with a fingertip, a rare gesture of respect. You see the whole board, Maya. You hear its whispers. Maya smiled shyly. In her head, she heard nothing but the quiet thrill of being recognized. Here was the CEO who fired executives mid-meeting, showing genuine admiration for her strategy. Jack stood and stretched, careful not to jostle the board. I'll just fix that printer and be out of your hair. Jade inclined her head. Don't rush. Stay a while if you like. Her tone held no sarcasm, only invitation. Jack looked at Maya, whose eyes danced between him and the board. She nodded, and Jack settled back down on the edge of his seat. Wrench forgotten. Maya and Jade resumed play, the pieces shifting in a private language known only to them. Each move revealed more Maya's fearless creativity, Jade's disciplined foresight, and the unspoken bond forming between them. Outside the lounge, the city churned on urgent meetings, flashing headlines, the relentless pace of ambition. Inside, a child and a CEO were engaged in a game that transcended titles and expectations, teaching each other lessons no corporate memo ever could. And as the afternoon light mellowed into gold, Maya looked up at Jade and whispered, Thank you for playing with me. Jade's gaze softened one last time. Thank you for the challenge. Her knight poised near Maya's king, the reflection of their shared journey shone brighter than any crystal could, promising new beginnings on an ancient board of black and white. The air in the executive lounge felt charged as Maya leaned forward to make her 5th move. Jade Sinclair's steel-gray eyes tracked every shift of Maya's hand, the crystal pieces catching the late afternoon sunlight and scattering rainbows across the polished floor. Jack Hayes sat to the side, arms folded, watching the game's delicate dance unfold before him, wrench momentarily forgotten in his lap. Their sequence had been swift and elegant. 1. Maya's pawn to e4, White's bold opening staking claim at the board's heart. 2. Jade's pawn to d5, a classical counter challenging Maya's advance. 3. Maya's knight to f3, quick development, eyes fixed on the center. 4. Jade's knight to c6, mirroring Maya's pattern, the first hint of symmetry. 5. Maya's bishop to b5, pinning the knight, tightening the noose. Now Maya paused only to consider her queen's path. The white queen stood at d1 majestic but restrained. Jade's gaze never wavered, unblinking as she tracked Maya's next gesture. Maya closed her eyes for a fraction of a second, recalling her father's advice, always look for the hidden threats and opportunities. She saw it then, a diagonal lane opening from d1 to h5, the perfect line to slice through Jade's defenses. She placed her queen on h5 in one fluid motion, the crystal sliding across the board like water. Then in a clear, confident voice, she declared, check. Silence fell. Even the distant hum of the espresso machine seemed to hush itself in that moment. Jade's composure faltered as her hand drifted halfway to her knight, frozen in indecision. She tilted her head, eyes widening at the sight of Maya's queen poised menacingly before her king's fortress. Check indeed, Jade whispered, leaning forward until her face hovered inches above the board. The two of them were suddenly breathing the same charged air, bound by the unspoken revelation that Maya's talent ran deeper than mere childhood curiosity. Across the glass wall, Jack's jaw dropped. He'd seen Maya absorb every lesson at home endgames, forks, pins, but never with a real opponent, let alone the city's most formidable CEO. He felt a swell of pride and awe that his daughter had not only learned the game, but could bend it to her will in 5 moves. Jade's fingers hovered over her rook, but she did not reach for it. Instead, she exhaled softly and closed her hand into a fist on the table's edge. Recognition dawned in her eyes. This little girl saw the game and perhaps the world differently. For so long, Jade had viewed everything in terms of power control and strategy to maintain her empire. Here was a reminder that strategy could also be poetry, that youthful insight could uncover patterns seasoned executives overlooked. Maya's cheeks flushed pink, but she remained poised, her small chin lifted in quiet confidence. She did not gloat. She simply looked at her pieces as though admiring a sunrise and then turned her gaze back to Jade, ready for whatever the CEO did next. Several heartbeats passed in that suspended moment before Jade nodded a gesture of respect that felt almost formal in its sincerity. She gathered her composure, sliding her rook sideways in a gesture that both acknowledged check and simultaneously deflected it a subtle dance of concede and combat. The crystal clinked and Maya felt the board shift under Jade's tactical response. Clever Jade said, eyes never leaving Maya's. Very clever. Maya allowed herself a small smile. She'd seen the potential queen fork on move 5 in her mind's eye, but executing it against a real opponent against Jade Sinclair felt like catching lightning in a bottle. Jack leaned forward, mindful not to disturb the board. I've never seen a faster check, he whispered, voice thick with pride. Maya shot him a sideways glance that said, Please don't embarrass me. Jade interrupted her tone, returning to its usual crisp professionalism, but underscored with new warmth. Your move, Maya, she said, indicating the board. Let's see where you take this next. Maya's heart fluttered with excitement. She touched her queen gingerly, moving it back to g4, drawing Jade's king into a deadlock while protecting her own defense. Each piece she moved felt like a word in a shared story, a conversation that transcended rank and job title. Jade countered, bringing her bishop to e6, the bishop's crystal curves catching the light in a silent salute to Maya's ingenuity. The game unfolded, pawns traded knights, danced in arcs. Only they could traverse bishops, sliced through diagonals, like dancers weaving ribbons of strategy. Jack watched the interplay with rapt attention, aware that this was more than a game. It was a revelation, a moment that would echo through both Maya's and Jade's lives. As the moves ticked off in Maya's mind, she sensed Jade's shift. The CEO, who dismissed people with a single glance, was now leaning forward, her face softened by genuine engagement. Maya realized she wasn't just playing against a corporate mogul. She was meeting a fellow strategist, someone who respected the unspoken poetry in chess. Finally, with one last delicate move, repositioning her rook to g5 to shield her queen. Maya asked softly, Check again? Jade paused, studying the board as if seeing it anew. She smiled fully this time, the kind of smile that speaks of admiration rather than triumph. Check, she admitted, her voice imbued with both defeat and delight. She reached out to lift Maya's queen, placing it back gently on d1. Jack whooped low in the background, earning a quick, admonishing look from Maya. She giggled quietly, delight and relief blooming in her chest. Jade gathered the pieces, resetting them into the starting position with methodical care. You have a gift, Maya Hayes, she said, addressing Maya by name for the first time. You don't just play the game, you understand it. Maya bit her lip, cheeks warmed by the praise. She looked at Jack, whose eyes glistened with pride, and then back at Jade. Thank you for the game, she said sincerely. It was fun. Jade nodded, her crisp blazer somehow less forbidding now that she'd shown her humanity. It was more than fun. It was enlightening. Maya hopped off her chair and ran to Jack's side, slipping her hand into his. Jade watched them, father and daughter, united in this unexpected moment of triumph, then offered a final nod. Jack cleared his throat and gave Jade a respectful inclination. Thank you for your time, ma'am. Printer's fixed, by the way. Jade inclined her head. Glad to hear it. And Maya, if you're ever up for another match, my door is open. Maya's eyes lit up. I'd like that. Jack picked up the wrench and Maya slipped her book under her arm. As they made their way toward the elevator, Jack felt the day shift beneath his feet. He'd come to fix a printer. He'd left with a memory he'd treasure forever. Behind them, Jade returned to her seat at the board, the pieces once again silent sentinels of possibility. She tapped the glossy wood thoughtfully, her gaze distant but thoughtful. Maya's check in 5 moves had stirred something in the CEO's heart, an echo of a world where brilliance wasn't measured in profit margins, but in the quiet power of a child's insight. And as the elevator doors closed on Jack and Maya, the crystal chess set remained glinting beneath the fading sun, waiting for its next whispered conversation to begin. The gated entrance of Jade Sinclair's Ocean View estate yawned open for Jack and Maya, as if it had been waiting just for them. Jack's aging sedan rolled past manicured hedges shaped like abstract sculptures, then curved along a driveway lined with salt-tolerant palms and lavender bushes bursting into bloom. The sea stretched out beneath them, its sapphire surface broken by whitecaps in the morning sun. Jade met them at the grand marble steps, dressed in a lightweight cashmere cardigan over tailored slacks, her hair pulled back to reveal the arc of her neck. "Welcome back," she said, voice warmer than their first encounters. Maya's eyes widened as she hopped out of the car, scanning the columns that rose like ivory guardians on either side of the entrance. Inside the foyer was a cathedral of light walls of pale limestone, a sweeping staircase, with glass balustrades and an enormous abstract painting in hues of teal and gold that felt as fluid as the ocean beyond. A series of French doors beckoned off to one side, sunlight spilling through into a library lined with floor-to-ceiling bookcases. Jade led them through the soft click of Maya's sneakers echoing on the polished stone floor. "Please make yourselves at home," Jade said. "Would you like something to drink?" "Tea juice, orange juice, please," Jack said, grateful for the normalcy of Maya's small voice beside him. Maya had already bounded toward the library. "Can I choose a book, Daddy?" she asked, her hand drifting along the spines, as though each one held a secret. "Of course," Jack smiled, catching Jade's eye with a grateful nod. Jade watched them with a fond expression, then turned and retrieved a crystal pitcher from a nearby console. She poured juice into 2 tall glasses and set them on a low table in the sunlit conservatory where orchids and ferns created a suspended garden. "Whenever you're ready," she said, motioning toward a pair of cushioned chairs flanking a small chess table. Maya hugged her book to her chest and followed Jack out to the terrace. The chairs were positioned to face the sea. Directly between them sat the new chess set, a handcrafted wooden board inset with mother-of-pearl pieces carved from marble and onyx. It was more intimate than the corporate crystal set, yet every bit as regal. Maya's eyes lit up. "Can I have white again?" she asked, dropping her book into Jack's waiting hand. "White it is," Jade said, lifting the white queen and offering it to Maya. Maya slipped the queen into her lap and set her feet on the chair's bottom rung, ready to dive in. Jack settled beside her, sipping his juice. Jade took the opposite seat, folding her legs beneath her with practiced ease. They began without fanfare. Maya's pawn to e4, Jade's pawn to e5. The afternoon breeze carried the scent of salt and jasmine mixing with the soft creak of the wicker terrace chairs. Maya's moves were quick, confident. Her knight leapt to f3, her bishop slid to c4. Jade watched each gesture through narrowed eyes as though she were both teacher and student in this living lesson. Jack leaned over to Maya. "You've got the board in your head already," he whispered. Maya nodded, tongue caught between her teeth. Jade shifted her rook to f6, a move that surprised them both. Maya's brow furrowed. "I didn't see that coming," she admitted, touch of admiration in her voice. Jade smiled, a hint of pride creasing her eyes. "Keep an eye on your knight," she advised softly. "And remember, sometimes the best offense is a good defense." Maya paused, studying the board, then repositioned her king's knight to d2, creating a shield around her fragile center. Jack sat back, impressed by her adaptability. For the next stretch of moves, they fell into companionable silence, punctuated only by the soft clicks of marble on wood. Maya's pieces advanced fluidly. Jade's responses were precise, the product of decades spent navigating both corporate chessboards and real ones. The sun dipped lower, painting the terrace in golden light, but neither player appeared eager to end the game. Finally, after Maya placed her queen on h5, threatening direct contact with Jade's king, she whispered, "Check." The word felt charged, as though it carried the weight of all her practice sessions and every cautious schoolyard match she'd ever played. Jade's composure faltered for a heartbeat. She reached out, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear, and then leaned forward, eyes flicking over the board. "Check, indeed," she said, quiet awe, softening her tone. She studied Maya rather than the pieces a new respect in her gaze. "You see things most adults miss." Maya's cheeks warmed. She tucked a curl behind her ear. "Thank you," she said, voice small in the widening space between them. Jade straightened and cleared her throat. "Let me free my knight," she said, sacrificing a pawn to release her trapped piece. The move was generous, both strategic and gracious. Maya watched the board shift under Jade's hand, learning something beyond mere tactics, creation of opportunity, even in sacrifice. They continued another 5 moves, Maya parrying Jade, probing each reaction a note in an intricate duet. When Maya eventually resigned, tipping her king with a nod, Jade reached across the board and shook her small hand. "You played brilliantly," she said, genuine warmth in her voice. Maya grinned her arms, hugging her queen close. Jack rose, clapping softly. "That was amazing, sweetheart." "I had a great teacher," Maya replied, sliding off the chair. Jade's smile deepened at the unexpected compliment. Jack cleared his throat, looking between the two of them. "I'll let you have some quiet now, Jade. Printer's still working fine, so we're good." Jade inclined her head. "Thank you for joining us, both of you." Jack picked up Maya's book and her abandoned juice glass, walking them back toward the library. Maya paused at the terrace door and turned. "Can I come back tomorrow?" she asked, voice hopeful. Jade looked at her reflectively, then nodded. "I'll leave the set here for you. Anytime you want a rematch." Maya's face lit up. "Promise? Promise." Hand in hand with Jack, Maya bounded back into the halls of the mansion, her laughter blending with the distant rhythm of waves against the shore. Jade watched them go, the mother-of-pearl board gleaming in the fading light. In that simple invitation to return, she felt something stir, the promise of a friendship born in moves and countermoves, a bond that transcended glass walls and boardroom politics. No grand declaration was needed. The weekend at the mansion had already revealed its truest gift, the shared revelation that even the most powerful among us can find insight, joy, and unexpected kinship across a chessboard. The afternoon sun streamed through the arched windows of Jade Sinclair's sunroom, painting the chessboard in warm, honeyed hues. Maya's small hands moved pieces with the quiet confidence of someone entirely at ease in this world of black and white. Jade watched her usual steel-clad poise softening at the edges as she realized that every intuitive strategy Maya employed echoed something she'd once known herself, a purity of play, unmarred by caution or calculation. Jade adjusted the cardigan at her shoulders as if to brace herself against the whirlpool of memories that Maya's moves were stirring. She remembered herself at 8 years old poring over a battered wooden set in her family's study, the scent of polished mahogany, mingling with the hush of late afternoons. She'd loved the knight's unpredictable leap, the queen's sweeping power, each move a miniature act of creation. But in the years since strategy had become a tool of control, a means to maintain her empire at any cost. The games she'd played as a child had been gentle exploratory. The ones she led now were battles of attrition. Maya slid her pawn to d5, trapping Jade's rook and forcing the queen to retreat. Jade's breath caught. The simplicity of the tactic, pure unadorned, sent a tremor through her armor. She realized she had been holding her breath, leaning forward in her chair, heart uncharacteristically racing. "That was clever," Jade said, voice low. She moved her queen back to h4, a desperate bid to stave off the threat. Yet even as she played, her mind drifted to the hollow echo of silence in her childhood home, the way her father's footsteps had patrolled the upstairs halls, never pausing to leave her a forgotten note or a small word of pride. Maya's lips curved in a faint smile as she watched Jade's maneuver. Then she raised her knight fingertips, caressing the marble, and tapped it to f6. Check. The word hung between them, soft but emphatic. Jade closed her eyes, letting the word sink in. Check, she whispered, exhaling, as if relieved to hear her own voice. She opened her eyes to find Maya's wide, earnest gaze filling the space where her own childhood self might have sat. The little girl wasn't intimidated by her title or reputation. She simply saw the board, and by extension the world, in terms of opportunity and possibility. Jade studied Maya's face. Here was no pretense, no performance. Here was a spark of innocence and courage that she hadn't felt in years. It felt fragile, like a hidden spring of hope beneath her concrete exterior. The realization cracked something open inside her, a door she'd long kept locked against vulnerability. She touched her bishop, gingerly sliding it to e7 to protect her king's flank. The move was defensive, but softer than her usual style. Maya nodded approvingly. "You defend with grace." Maya observed her voice, that of a seasoned commentator rather than a child. Jade felt a lump in her throat as Maya's words fell like petals over her hardened heart. "Thank you," Jade replied, voice catching. She hadn't expected praise from anyone, least of all an 8-year-old. Outside, the ocean breeze whispered through the palm fronds, carrying the salt-laced promise of renewal. Jade closed her eyes briefly, letting the scent wash over her, prying loose the memories she'd buried. She remembered the cradle in the nursery, the lullabies that had once soothed her to sleep, and the abrupt silence when her own child had been taken from her. 8 years had passed since she'd signed away that tiny hand, convinced it was for the best. Yet every now and then, in the hush of night, she still heard the echo of her daughter's first cry. Her hand trembled as she moved her rook to c8, resigning herself to Maya's mounting advantage. She looked up and met Maya's gaze, uncertainty softening the lines around her eyes. The CEO's mask had slipped, revealing something raw and unguarded beneath. Maya hesitated as though sensing Jade's inner storm, and then gently offered, "Your move, Miss Sinclair." Jade drew in a breath. The title sounded strange in her ears, devoid of its usual weight. "Jade," she murmured. "Just Jade." Maya smiled. "Okay, Jade." Jack, who had been quietly observing from the side, leaned forward. "This is incredible. I've never seen her play like this." Jade looked at Jack, gratitude flickering in her eyes. "She has a gift," she said, tone almost reverent. "You've given her the freedom to explore it." Jack swallowed, nodding. "I've tried." Jade turned back to the board. The final moves awaited. Maya moved her queen to d4, a calculated advance that sealed the fate of Jade's king. Jade studied the position and nodded, signaling her acceptance. "Maya has won," Jade announced softly. She reached across and gently lifted Maya's queen, setting it back on its home square with delicate care. Maya pressed her fingertips to the surface of the queen as if reunited with an old friend. "Thank you for the game," she said, eyes shining with genuine warmth. Jade felt her own eyes water, touched by the child's graciousness. They reset the pieces, placing them carefully for a new game. Jade studied each pawn and knight as she set it, thinking about the careful hands that would move them next. She realized she wanted Maya to have every opportunity she herself had been denied, room to fail space, to learn, a mentor to guide rather than judge. "Maya," Jade said, rising from her chair. Maya looked up, curious. Jade extended her hand. "Would you like to learn a new opening? One my own mentor taught me at your age?" Maya's face lit up in delight. "Yes, please." Jack stood as well, marveling at the transformation before him. The titan of industry, humbled by a child's intuitive mastery, cracking open to rediscover the wonder she'd forsaken. Jade led Maya through the mechanics of the Sicilian defense, her voice gentle and patient, eyes bright with the rediscovered joy of teaching. As they played, Jack slipped out briefly to fetch tea and cookies, returning to find Jade and Maya engrossed in a new dialogue of moves and countermoves. He sipped his tea, heart full aware that this was more than a game. It was a bridge spanning years of regret and hope, linking a CEO and a child in a shared rediscovery of innocence and wonder. When the sun dipped low, painting the estate's halls in dusk's soft glow, Maya finally stretched and yawned. "I think I've learned enough for today," she said. Jade nodded in agreement. Maya gathered her pieces, placing each back in its marble castle. Jade followed suit, her fingers lingering on the knight, as though reluctant to end their time together. "Thank you, Maya," Jade whispered. "You've reminded me how to see the game and the world through new eyes." Maya patted Jade's hand. "And you've shown me that playing isn't just about winning. It's about sharing the board." Jade closed her eyes, letting the words sink in. She realized in that moment that her armor had cracked, not from pressure, but from the gentle insistence of a child's intuitive grace. Hope and regret, memory and possibility mingled like the last rays of sunset in her heart. Jack rose and collected their empty teacups. He looked at Jade with newfound respect. "You were wonderful," he said simply. Jade turned to him, a hint of a smile on her lips. So was Maya. They walked together down the marble hall, Maya skipping ahead with a boundless energy that whispered of future triumphs. Behind them, the chessboard waited silent, patient, and ready for the next game in which two unlikely players would continue to reshape each other's worlds. Jack Hayes woke to the soft glow of dawn filtering through their living room curtains, the hum of their humble apartment stirring to life around him. He stretched and rubbed the sleep from his eyes, then reached for his phone on the coffee table, where yesterday's teacup still stood cold. His thumb flicked across the screen, and there it was, a single message from Jade Sinclair. Maya's welcome for another match, no agendas. He blinked, surprised by the warmth threaded through those 7 words. Jade Sinclair, the formidable CEO whose every public appearance set corporate halls whispering, had sent a personal invitation to his 8-year-old daughter. No contracts, no media requests, no fees, just chess. Jack read the message twice, incredulity twisting his chest. He wondered if it was some kind of mistake, Jade's assistant sending a draft. He scrolled up to confirm the sender. J.S. Sinclair. No question she meant it. The phone buzzed again with Maya's sleepy yawn. "Daddy?" Maya's small voice drifted down the hallway. "Is it time for school?" Jack slipped the phone into his pocket and called back. "Morning, sweetheart." "Not quite. I've got something to show you first, okay?" A beat, then a bright. "Okay." He padded into the kitchenette where Maya sat at the table, hair-tousled cereal bowl. Half empty. Her eyes were still glazed with dreams, but the minute they saw him, they lit up. "You got it?" she asked eagerly, wiping milk from her chin with the back of her hand. Jack pulled his phone back out. "Read this," he said, handing it to her. Maya leaned forward, squinting as though trying to make the letters dance into a secret code she could decipher. When she realized it was addressed to her, she gasped and set the phone down with a clatter. Cereal sloshing over the bowl's rim. Really another game. Her spoon clattered to the table. Jack chuckled. "Looks like it." "No agendas," she said. "Just chess." Maya leapt up, nearly knocking over her chair. "Can I go?" "Right now?" Jack slid onto the bench beside her, wrapping an arm around her. "Not right now. You've got school, remember? But I'll text her back to say we'll come whenever she's free." Maya sniffed, blinking. "Okay. But can we play this weekend?" Jack nodded. "Absolutely. I'll let her know." She grabbed his hand and pumped it up and down. "Thank you, Daddy." "Thank you." He laughed as Maya practically danced around the tiny kitchen. "Slow down there, Grandmaster," Maya giggled, gathering her cereal bowl and spoon. "I am a Grandmaster," she declared, marching toward the bedroom to get dressed, "and soon everyone will know it." Jack watched her go, a swell of pride in his chest. He opened the message thread again, thumb hovering over the reply field. "Thank you, Jade. Maya and I would love to come by this Saturday afternoon." He sent it, then sat back and let the morning light wash over him. He thought about the weekend's earlier game, the way Jade had watched Maya's lightning-quick tactics, the genuine fascination flickering in her eyes, the way she'd softened the enormous weight of her title to become simply a curious opponent. That invitation, so casually phrased, signaled something profound, that this match between CEO and child transcended any corporate power play. It was pure an exchange of insight, curiosity, and respect. Later that afternoon, Jack picked Maya up from school, her backpack bouncing as she bounded to meet him. So he asked as they climbed into the sedan. "Excited for chess?" Maya's grin stretched from ear to ear. "I'm already practicing new openings in my head." Jack shook his head in amusement and steered onto the highway. "Well, you'll have your chance soon enough." In the passenger seat, Maya pulled out a small notebook and pencil. She tapped her pencil against her temple as though summoning fresh ideas. Jack glanced at her through the rear-view mirror. "What are you writing?" "New strategies," Maya replied thoughtfully. "One I call the Sunset Gambit. You sacrifice a pawn to control the center, then bring your queen out at sunset." Jack laughed. "I'll look forward to seeing that in action." Maya's eyes grew serious. "You know, Daddy, Mrs. Sinclair didn't just invite me because I beat her that one time. She said she learned something that afternoon. She paused. She said I reminded her of someone she used to be. Jack felt a pang of something tender and sad, too much backstory in his head about Jade's private life, none of it fully known. That's a remarkable compliment, Maya. Maya nodded, tapping her notebook. I want to learn more from her. Jack pulled off at their exit and parked in the same shaded lot where they'd first met under glass-walled scrutiny. He turned to Maya. Just remember, she's still a grown-up with a very busy life. Be respectful, but don't let that stop you from playing your best. Maya hopped out and opened the door for him. I know. I'll be polite and focused. She clicked her heels together as if saluting a general. Jack smiled, ruffling her hair affectionately. That's my girl. Across the sea of concrete, the Carrington estate rose marble and glass illuminated in the late afternoon. The sun glinted off the ocean beyond like a promise of things yet to come. Inside, Jade Sinclair watched the correspondence sent by Jack show her own words reflected back. We'll see you Saturday. It sat in her outbox, a private contract between two lives, one seasoned by boardroom battles, the other shaped by hallway recesses and bedtime stories. She exhaled the first genuine breath she'd allowed herself in weeks. The chessboard on the terrace had become more than an afternoon distraction. It had become a portal to a world she'd thought she'd left behind the day she closed the nursery door of her ocean view home. Jade stood smoothing her blazer and poured herself a small glass of lemonade. As she sipped, her thoughts drifted to Maya's first game, how the child's intuitive strategy had cracked open something she'd sealed tight, a sense of innocence, the joy of discovery, the raw thrill of possibility untainted by fear. The invitation wasn't just for chess. It was Jade's own unspoken plea to reconnect with that part of herself. The following Saturday, Jade would set out the mother-of-pearl board once more, arrange the pieces with ceremonial care, and wait. Not for reports or mergers, but for a small girl whose presence had shown her a kinder game, one where victory wasn't measured in profits, but in shared moments of wonder. She raised her glass in a silent toast to that future, to unbidden invitations, she thought, and to the games that change us. And as the sun set over the ocean, Jade Sinclair, CEO, strategist, reawakened child, felt something fragile stir and crack open anew. Late that evening, Jade Sinclair sat alone in her private office, the city lights glittering through floor-to-ceiling windows like distant constellations. The ocean breeze drifted in through an open casement, carrying the faint scent of salt and lavender. She leaned back in her leather chair legs, crossed her mind replaying every move Maya had made on the chessboard, each unexpected twist that had mirrored patterns Jade once knew in her own youth. The housekeeper's footsteps had long since faded the estate quiet, except for the hum of air conditioning and the distant crash of waves against the cliffs below. On her mahogany desk lay an envelope, its edges sealed with crimson wax bearing her family crest. She'd received it that afternoon, hand-delivered by a courier who wouldn't meet her eyes. It contained a DNA report commissioned quietly months ago, when an unshakable intuition first whispered that Maya was more than just a bright chess protege. Jade had resisted opening it, fearing the truth her own heart, and the child who'd reignited something fragile and precious inside her. Now, with the house empty and the night thick around her, she broke the seal. The inner envelope revealed a single sheet of heavy paper printed in precise type, a barcode at the top test results below. She unfolded it and read, Sample A. Maya Bennett. Sample B. Jade Sinclair. Probability of maternity 99.9998%. Her breath caught. The paper trembled in her hand, words swimming as the world tilted beneath her. Years of steel resolve dissolved in an instant, replaced by a torrent of memory and emotion. She closed her eyes, recalling the day 8 years ago when she'd learned of her pregnancy, 8 years of careful planning, of corporate ascendancy and relentless ambition. The day she'd stood in her father's study, the rain streaking the windows like tears, and made the decision that would define her life to sign away her child in a moment of fear under pressure she believed insurmountable. She'd convinced herself it was the only way to protect her career, her family's legacy. She'd paid someone to handle the adoption paperwork, disappearing into boardroom battles as though that act erased the child she'd carried. Her chest tightened as she remembered the empty nursery, the echoes of silence in a house designed for achievement, not motherhood. She'd channeled every ounce of grief into power, building an empire that demanded respect with the same fervor she'd once longed for a child's laughter. And yet here it was. Some days truth delivered with cold precision now lay in her hands. Maya wasn't just a gifted protege, she was Jade's daughter. Jade pressed the report to her heart, the edges sharp against her cardigan. Tears blurred her vision. How did she live all these years with that hole inside her, an absence she had thought she'd mastered? She'd carried the weight of it like a shield. And now that shield had shattered, leaving her raw and exposed. Her mind flitted to Maya's face that afternoon, the curiosity in her eyes, the fearless way she reached for every challenge. Jade realized that every intuitive move Maya made, every spark of brilliance had been inherited, a legacy far more profound than any boardroom victory. The room felt suddenly small, the mahogany desk too neat, the portraits of past Sinclair CEOs on the walls, watching her like silent judges. Jade stood and paced, paper clutched in one hand, her heels clicking across the hardwood floor. She paused at the window and gazed out at the moonlit water, searching the horizon for guidance she wasn't sure existed. Could she meet Maya again this time? Not as her CEO, nor merely an opponent, but as a mother. Could she bridge 8 years of distance, of unspoken longing and unuttered apologies? Each question pressed on her chest like a stone. She sank to the edge of her desk, placing the DNA report before her. Her fingers traced the printed numbers 99.9998%. In chess terms, that was a decisive move, a checkmate delivered in silence. The parentage had been determined with near certainty. There was no denying it. But what next? Jade pressed her palms to her eyes. How did one reach out after so many years? What language did a mother use when she'd traded lullabies for boardroom briefings? The invitation she'd sent for another match, no agendas now, took on a deeper meaning. It had been an unconscious plea for reconnection, a first movement in a game of hearts. Her phone buzzed lightly, jolting her from the spiral of hesitation. She reached for it, expecting another professional email. Instead, it was Maya chirping, "Daddy says I should practice the Queen's Gambit this weekend." What do you think Jade's breath caught? Maya was ready to play, to learn to trust. This was her moment to respond with honesty and courage. She typed carefully, "I'd be honored to show you." Then she paused, fingers hovering. She added, "And if you'd like, I can also teach you some of the openings I learned long ago." And then crucially, she tapped, "I have more for you than chess." Before sending, she stared at the words, feeling each syllable resonate in her chest. She hit send, and Rose's phone cradled like a fragile promise. Jade moved to the nursery, once empty, now repurposed as a reading room, and retrieved the single stuffed bear that remained on its shelf. She held it close, breathing in the scent of faded fabric, letting the weight of memory and possibility settle around her. 8 years of distance, and everything she thought she'd sealed away had exploded into urgent possibility. She looked down at the tiles beneath her feet and let a single tear fall. The game had changed. It was no longer about strategies and territories. It was about truth, about reclaiming what she'd lost, and about the quiet courage it took to ask for checkmate in the only way that mattered, with an open heart. Jack stepped onto the terrace just as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the ocean in streaks of molten gold and rose. The wind carried a gentle salt tang that mingled with the scent of jasmine climbing the balustrade. Jade stood at the railing, looking out at the water, her silhouette drawn thin against the fading light. She turned as Jack approached her, crisp blazer replaced by a soft shawl tossed over her shoulders. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said, voice low. The clink of her heels softened on the marble floor as Jack moved beside her, offering silent support. "I had to," Jack replied, folding his arms loosely. He regarded her in the soft glow, noting how the lines around her eyes, usually so severe, now appeared weary and vulnerable. "Your message?" It sounded urgent. Jade inhaled, her gaze drifting back to the horizon. She opened her mouth, then closed it as if warring with the words. Finally she exhaled and began, voice trembling. 8 years ago I was 26 and fresh out of grad school. I'd just taken my place on the board, a seat I'd fought for since I was a teenager. Then I found out I was pregnant. Jack let that settle between them. The only sound was the whisper of waves against the cliffs. Jade continued, taking a small step away from the railing. My father called me into his study. He looked at me like I'd broken something precious. She paused, pressing her hand lightly against her abdomen as though it remembered the life she'd carried. He said my pregnancy would create a scandal that would disgrace our entire family and ruin our company's reputation. He gave me an ultimatum: terminate it or lose everything. Jack's breath caught. He remembered the ruthless way Jade had climbed to power-cutting deals and severing ties without remorse. Never had he imagined a moment when fear and love had wrestled inside her. He kept silent, attentive. I was terrified, Jade admitted, her voice cracking. Not of the child, of what I'd become if I kept her. She looked at Jack, eyes glistening. I believed my career, my place in this world, was more important than my own flesh and blood. So I agreed. I signed the papers. I told myself that I was protecting her from the headlines, from judgment. I told myself I'd give her the freedom to grow away from my mistakes. Jack felt a pang in his chest, empathy blooming for a woman he barely knew. You thought you were doing the right thing, he said softly. Jade nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I thought I was strong, but I was just afraid. She turned back to the sea shoulders, trembling. I buried the news. I buried my guilt. I barred the nursery door and threw away the key. Jack reached out, placing a hand on her arm. The warmth of his touch grounded her. You were a child yourself, he said quietly. You made a choice under pressure. You did what you thought you had to do. He paused, searching her face. You never had to carry that alone. Jade stared at her shaking hand. I thought I had, because I couldn't bear the thought of facing anyone. Not my board, not my colleagues, not myself. Her voice faltered. And then Maya walked into my life, and every move she made on that board reminded me of what I'd lost: kindness, curiosity, the courage to be vulnerable. Jack's gaze softened. She's special, he agreed. She sees the world differently. And she saw you, not Jade Sinclair, the CEO, but Jade Sinclair, the person. Jade turned to him, eyes searching his. I wanted to tell you earlier when I saw her that first time, but I was terrified you'd think less of me, terrified you'd take Maya away. Jack's breath caught. He swallowed. I thought you were just being kind to a young player. He ran a hand through his hair. I didn't know the truth until the DNA report. Jade placed a hand over her heart. I couldn't bear the idea of losing her again. I thought if I kept my distance, I could protect both of us. But distance isn't protection, it's a barrier. I'm tired of barriers. She turned fully to face him, tears shining in the terrace light. Jack, Maya is my daughter. I relinquished her believing it was best for her, but she never left my heart, not for a moment. Jack stepped closer, lowering his voice. I know. He paused, letting the weight of that confession settle. I know what it's like to carry a constant worry for a child. Lots of parents do. But I also know that a child belongs with those who love them most. If you want to be in her life, we'll make room. No boardroom politics, no agendas. Jade's lips trembled in relief. You understand? After everything. Jack lifted her hand, placing it over Maya's beer, the childhood toy Maya had left behind the first weekend. I see a mother who lost her way and wants to come home. That's all that matters. Jade leaned into his embrace, the first genuine connection she'd allowed herself in years. Thank you, she whispered. I'm so sorry. Jack rested his chin on her head. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do next. Will you stay? Will you be part of her life going forward? Jade straightened, taking his hand to steady herself. Yes, she said firmly. I want to be her mom. They stood together on the terrace, the darkness settling, but the promise of dawn ahead. Below them, the waves whispered against the shore, a rhythm of renewal and hope. Jack squeezed her hand. Then let's start now. Jade nodded, feeling the weight lift from her shoulders for the first time in years. Now she agreed, her voice steady in the night air. In that moment, two hearts bearing the same wound, now bound by truth and the courage to heal, Jade Sinclair and Jack Hayes, took the first step toward a family remade by honest confession and unwavering acceptance. Jade's invitation arrived in Jack's inbox early one morning, an official nomination to the Young Masters Invitational in New York City. The subject line read simply, Maya Bennett, by nomination only. Jack stared at the message twice, heart thudding. He scrolled down to the body. Dear Mr. Hayes, It is my great pleasure to nominate Maya Bennett for the Young Masters Invitational held at the Manhattan Grand Hotel ages 8 to 16. Her recent displays of strategic creativity and fearlessness in play have convinced me she belongs among the finest rising talents in the country. Warm regards, Jade Sinclair. Jack closed his eyes, picturing Maya's wide grin, her mind alive with possibilities. He dialed Jade's number before he could second-guess himself. "Got your message," he said tentatively when she answered. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely," Jade replied, her voice steady yet infused with pride. "She earned it. I've already submitted her application. They'll cover her entry fee." She paused, then added softly, "I'd like to go with you if that's okay." Jack exhaled. "It's more than okay." He pictured Maya practicing openings at the kitchen table, eyes bright with purpose. He felt a fierce determination to say yes. By late afternoon, plane tickets were booked. Jack told Maya on his drive home from school. "Pack your favorite chess book," he said, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. "New York's calling." Maya's scream of delight echoed off the car windows. "I can't believe it. I'm going to New York." "Thank you, Daddy, and thank you, Mom." She beamed, turning in her seat even as Jack frowned at Jade's unspoken title. They had agreed Jade would simply be Jade now, but to Maya she was at that moment Mom. The weekend dawned clear and crisp. Their flight over the city glittered like a field of lights beneath a glass sky. Jack steered their cab through midtown Manhattan. Maya pressed against the window, and Jade sat beside her, clutching her daughter's hand, tears of pride welling. The Manhattan Grand Hotel lobby was a marble-floored cathedral of glamour, soaring pillars, crystal chandeliers, and a long velvet rope guiding attendees into the tournament hall. Parents in tailored suits chatted softly. Children in blazers and crisp shirts clutched tuxedo board cases. The air thrummed with anticipation. Maya, clutching her miniature backpack and mother-of-pearl chess set case, took it all in with wide-eyed wonder. Jade draped a gentle arm around her shoulders. "Ready?" she asked in a low voice. Maya nodded, determination brightening her features. "Let's do this." Jack, standing behind them, felt his chest tighten with emotion. He placed a steadying hand on Maya's shoulder. "Remember, just play how you always do." Maya gave him a quick grin, just like home daddy. They crossed the plush carpet into the main hall. Rows of tables stretched toward a raised dais where the tournament officials sat behind a long table. The space was hushed, save for the soft tap of footsteps and the occasional murmur of strategy. Each table hosted 2 chairs, a chessboard, and a digital clock. Spectators lined the perimeter behind a second velvet rope. Jade guided Maya to the table labeled Board 12. Her opponent, a 13-year-old named Tristan Lee, sat confidently in his chair, adjusting his tie with practiced ease. He looked up, sizing Maya in the same way Jade once had a quick scan of frayed sneakers, the battered notebook under Maya's arm, the fierce gleam in her eyes. Maya settled into the chair, placing her case on the floor beside her. Jade and Jack slipped into the first row of spectators. Maya turned, offering them both a determined nod, then faced Tristan. Their handshake was brief but respectful. The tournament director read the opening announcements, then said, "Begin." Maya opened with her signature pawn to e4, her shoulders squared. Jack and Jade shared a proud glance in the front row. Tristan responded with pawn to c6, the Sicilian defense. Maya's lips curved in a small, familiar smile. She'd worked on this defense last week under Jade's guidance. A hush fell as Maya brought her knight to f3. Jade's heart fluttered. "There she is," she whispered to Jack, who nodded, eyes bright. Tristan gave a slow nod, his grin widening. He played pawn to d5, an aggressive counter. Maya's brow furrowed in concentration. She jabbed her pawn to e5. Gasps rippled through the parents behind the rope, rare to see such bold play from a newcomer. Hour 1. Maya developed her second knight. Her bishops carved elegant diagonals across the board. Jack leaned forward, whispering notes of encouragement under his breath. Jade sat rigid, but her eyes glistened unbidden. Hour 2. Tristan launched a queenside attack, his rooks and queens swirling toward Maya's king. Maya's defense was unorthodox but brilliant. 2 moves later, she unleashed her queen onto h5, slicing through Tristan's formation. The hall fell silent. Tristan froze. "Check," Maya whispered, soft but unshakable. The tension broke in a ripple of applause. Even the director glanced toward board 12 with raised eyebrows. Jade closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. Jack's hand covered his mouth to stifle a cheer. Tristan regrouped, but Maya's army was united. Within 10 moves, she maneuvered her rook and knight to deliver a fork on Tristan's queen and king. With trembling fingers, she reached across and slid her knight checkmate. The hall erupted. Tablets clicking pictures, parents cheering, children shouting. Maya sat frozen for a heartbeat, then turned to Jack and Jade, eyes shining. "I did it," she mouthed. Jade sprang from her seat, brushing past other spectators to reach Maya's side. She enveloped her in a proud embrace, whispering, "You were incredible, sweetheart." Tristan stood and offered Maya a hug, blinking back tears of his own. The two clapped each other on the shoulder before retreating to their chairs. Jack and Jade shared a look of astonished joy. Maya's fearless play had upended expectations in this marble-floored arena. Later on the dais, Maya accepted her medal. She lifted it above her head, the gold glinting against her braided hair. Jade and Jack joined her arms around her shoulders, and the crowd rose in a standing ovation. Cameras flashed. Reporters clamored for quotes. Maya looked at her parents, at Jade's proud, slightly trembling smile, at Jack's tear-bright eyes, and realized she had given them something more than a trophy. She'd given them a shared legacy, proof that brilliance could emerge from unlikely partnerships, that love and strategy could transform lives, and that the bonds of family, newly formed and yet centuries old, were the truest victory of all. As they descended from the podium, Maya held both parents' hands. Jade whispered, "Next game, same board." Maya beamed. Always. Jack watched them, heart full. The chess world had witnessed a child shock an entire tournament. Jade and he had witnessed something even more profound. The shared legacy of a mother, a father, and their daughter, woven together on a grand stage where fearlessness triumphed over doubt and love, dictated every move. The final match concluded under a wash of fluorescent lights in the cavernous tournament hall. Yet as Maya shook hands with her opponent, a composed girl 2 years older, the noise faded into nothingness for Jade and Jack. Their daughter had just triumphed once more, proving every bit her rightful place among these young chess masters. The trophy nestled in Maya's small hands felt heavier than any she'd held before. But it was the moment afterward, the moment Maya turned her eyes glassy with excitement and gratitude, that truly mattered. "Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad." Maya said, her voice steady but luminous. Jack's breath caught at the sound of her words. Jade felt her heart crack open anew. Hearing the two names as though they were a promise made real. Jade's lips trembled into a smile, and she rushed forward, sweeping Maya into a warm embrace. Jack closed the distance as well, enveloping both Maya and Jade in a circle of arms that felt unbreakable. The applause of the crowd, the flash of cameras, the hum of chatter, all of it receded into the background, leaving only the three of them suspended in a bubble of shared triumph and belonging. Jack's voice was thick as he said, "We are so proud of you, Sweet Pea." He kissed the top of Maya's head, ruffling her curls as she leaned into Jade's arms. Jade rested her cheek against Maya's hair. "You did it, my brave girl," she whispered. "You showed everyone who you are." Maya peered up at them, her medal's ribbon draped around her neck. "I did it because I had the best team," she declared, glancing between Jade's shining eyes and Jack's beaming smile. "I would never have made it without you both." The elegance of the hotel lobby, the weight of corporate titles, the glitz of New York's elite, none of it held sway in this moment. What held them together was far more elemental truth, vulnerability, and the simple, timeless bond of love. Jade squeezed Maya's shoulder, her own eyes brimming. Jack placed a hand on Jade's back, silent solidarity in the glow of his daughter's achievement. As they crossed the polished marble toward the exit, cameras pivoted to capture the hand-in-hand image of the CEO turned mother, the maintenance tech turned father, and their champion daughter. Reporters called out Ms. Sinclair. "How does it feel to share this victory?" But Jade merely raised a finger in playful hush, as though to say, "This is our private moment." Outside Fifth Avenue hummed with late-night traffic, the lights of billboards and taxis painting the sidewalk in kaleidoscopic color. Maya skipped along between Jade and Jack, her trophy clasped tightly under one arm. They paused at the curb to let the light change the bustle of the city, swirling around them like confetti. Jade crouched to Maya's level. "Do you want to say something to the city lights?" she asked, voice soft but full of warmth. Maya tipped her head back, eyes bright against the glare of neon. "New York." "Thank you," she called, voice clear enough to rise above honking horns and murmured crowds. "Thank you for believing in me." A nearby passerby smiled, and a cluster of tourists raised their phones to record a child's impromptu salute to the city. Jack laughed and joined Maya in waving. Jade stood behind them, her heart swelling with a love that transcended the trophies and the titles, the victories and the losses. They continued down the sidewalk, moving in a choreography of unity. Jade's hand found Jack's, and Maya's hand linked theirs, forming a chain none could break. The city lights, once symbols of ambition and isolation, now seemed to spotlight their journey. A CEO who reclaimed her heart, a father who never let go, and a daughter who taught them both what truly mattered. They rounded the corner onto a quieter side street where Jack flagged down a cab. Inside, Jade settled beside Maya, smoothing a stray curl from her daughter's forehead. Jack took the front seat, the driver giving them a friendly nod as they loaded the trophy into the back. The cab pulled away and Maya pressed her cheek to the window, watching the city ripple by. "Do you want to tell them how you feel?" Jack asked, glancing back. Maya nodded, voice muffled by glass. "I feel complete." Jade laid a hand on her daughter's knee. "That's exactly how family feels," she said. "Not perfect, just complete in our love." Maya smiled and Jade squeezed her hand. Jack turned on the overhead light for a glimpse of both their faces in the rearview mirror. Maya's triumphant glow. Jade's proud tears, Jack's steadfast joy. They rode in a cocoon of shared triumph, the city buzzing around them, a backdrop to their private moment. When the cab pulled up to Jack and Maya's apartment building, they climbed out together, the trophy cradled in Maya's arms like a beacon. Jade walked with them to the door, every step a testament to her commitment to this new family she had chosen to embrace fully. Inside the building's lobby, Jack reached for the elevator button. Maya leaned against Jade, the two of them standing close as the doors slid open. Jack pressed the button for their floor, and the elevator chimed. As they settled inside, Maya piped up, "Can we play chess at home tomorrow?" Jade laughed, eyes meeting Jack's. Every day she promised voice soft with emotion. Jack nodded. Every single day. The elevator doors closed, and in the small, mirrored chamber, they saw themselves CEO tech worker and their daughter reflected as equals, bound not by obligation, but by love. No boardroom drama, no corporate maneuvering, no one left standing outside. They had found each other's hearts in the quiet checkmates, in the grand victories, in the smiles and tears, in the shared legacy forged by truth and second chances. As the elevator ascended, Maya pressed her finger against the mirror, tracing a heart around their three intertwined reflections. Jade smiled, tears glistening. Jack stepped between them, placing an arm around each. And in that tight, luminous embrace, they were not titles or reputations or achievements. They were simply Mom, Dad, and Maya, at last truly and irrevocably a family.